Hi guys, this is Mr. Love. Unfortunately, I can't be here today because I'm at a district meeting, but I think it would be nice to kind of go through the first problem in our classwork today so that you guys know what you're doing. Um, so what we're looking at today is we're starting chapter 8, and chapter 8 is a unit that's going to be largely on statistics. So the first lesson is going to be on comparing distributions. So the first problem in our classwork, 8-19, revolves a young man named Josh who is working on his golf game. And so what Josh has been doing, he's been recording um, the distance to the hole with both a wedge and an 8-iron. So he's been recording his golf game with two different golf clubs. So what he's done is he has created a table with the following values in order to see what his distance to the hole is with each club. Now, as this table currently stands, it's not very organized. So we're going to need to organize his table is going to be the first step we're going to need to do. Now, in problem 8, it tasks us with creating a histogram and a box plot for each of the clubs. Now, since I'm going to be doing the wedge, you're going to be doing the 8-iron. So I'm going to be walking you through how to do the wedge. So while I walk you through this, I'm going to expect you to be writing down when I tell you to write down. So the very first thing you want to do then is organize the data, and I organized it from least to greatest, or you can also think of that as I've organized it from the minimum all the way down to the maximum. So the minimum number is 0, and the maximum number in this case is going to be 25. We have 10 total numbers. So we have 10 total numbers. So after we've organized it from least to greatest, we are going to make what's called a histogram. Another word for a histogram, you may have heard of a bar graph. Basically, they're the same thing. So what I want you to do now is copy down this table. So if you need to, please pause the video and give the students enough time to copy down these numbers from least to greatest. So I'll give you guys a few seconds. If you need to pause the video, do so now. Okay, so hopefully you've had enough time to do this. After you've organized the data from least to greatest, turn in your packet to page number 3. And so on page number 3, you have two graphs. You have one for the wedge and one for the 8-iron. Like I said, I'm going to help you out with the wedge, and you will be doing the 8-iron on your own. So on this graph, we're going to be making two different types, or on this axis, we're going to make two different kinds of graphs. The first one we're going to make is down here, and this is just the bar graph. Up here, we have what's known as a box plot. So to start, let's just look at the data in our graphs, or what the axes are trying to tell us. On the y-axis, we have what's known as the frequency, and on the x-axis, we have the distance to hole in yards. The frequency is going to refer to the number of times that we count numbers that are going to be from the range of 0 to 5. So let's go back to the first page. And we're going to count the frequency, or the number of times we see the numbers that are going to be in that range of 0 to 5. Now, what's important to note here is that when I talk about the range from 0 to 5, you don't actually include the maximum number, which in this case would be 5 in that case, which is this number right here. So let's count how many times we have a number from 0 to 5 in our data. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have 5 numbers, and that's our frequency from 1 to 5. So back here on your histogram, your frequency from 0 to 5 is going to be 5. The reason it's not 6 is because, like I said, we do not include the maximum value in that case. So we need to now make the frequency for the numbers 5 through 10. So we have to go back to our table, and if you see, we only have two numbers that are from that range, from 5 to 10, 5 and 7. So our frequency in that case is 2. As you'll see from the range from 10 to 15, we do not have any data points in that category. We do have a 15, but since that's the maximum range, it won't go in this area. It'll go from the 15 to 20 range. So if you look up here, we have one number that is 15 through 20. So we just have one. And then the other ranges, 20 to 25 and 25 to 30, we only have one number for each. So if you need to pause the video to allow the students to copy down the bar graph, please do that now. Okay, so we just created a histogram. The next type of graph that we need to make is what's known as a box plot. So what a box plot is it's a really useful type of graph that tells us the range, the first quartile, the median, and the third quartile. So luckily we've already organized our data for the previous graph, so that's going to make doing this much easier. When I'm making a box plot, almost every time I do it, I just write this data in. So I know what the minimum is, I know what my maximum is going to be, and then you need to find the median in the first quartile and the third quartile. In order to find the median, you just find what the middle number is. In this case, we have 10 data points, so we are going to need to take the average of the fifth and sixth data point. So in that case, the fifth and sixth data point are the numbers 3 and the number 5. So we have to take the average of 3 plus 5, which is equal to 8, and the average would be 4. So that is our median. To find the first quartile, you basically just find the median of the first half of the numbers. So in this case, we are going to find the median of the first 5 data points. Since this is going to be an odd number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Since it's odd, the middle number is going to be 3. We don't need to do any averaging. We can just say that the number 2 is going to be the median of the first quartile. So our first quartile number is equal to 2. To find the third quartile, that is the median of the second half of the numbers, which is going to be the data points 6 through 10. So we have to find the median over here, which the middle number between 6 and 10 is going to be the number 15. So this represents our third quartile. Now, why this is important to label all of this, it makes doing our box plot very easy once we have all of this data in here. So turn back to page number 3, and we are going to make our box plot. So when you look at your box plot, the first thing I like to do is I like to make a vertical line for both my minimum and my maximum value. Your minimum value in this case is going to be 0, and your maximum value is going to be 25. So those are a minimum and maximum. So I just do a vertical line for each. That way I know where they're at. Then you just start adding in what you've already found. So we've already found the first quartile earlier, which is 2. And so what I do is I do a vertical line at 2. We found the median, which is 4, so I do another vertical line. And then I do another vertical line for the third quartile. You are going to you're going to draw in a horizontal line from your first quartile all the way down to your third quartile. And so what you'll see is it'll make a box, which is why this type of graph has a box plot. Then you're going to connect the low range or the minimum range to the first quartile and the third quartile to the maximum. So now that you've done this, or if you need a little bit of time, this would be a good place to pause the video. But if you don't need extra time, this is just a really good way to look at a lot of data in one area. This not only tells us what the median is, it kind of gives us an idea of how the data is distributed. So just by looking at this, you can see sort of that the majority of the data rests in this area right here. And we can see the range is going to be from about 10 to 15 is where the majority of our data is going to be, it's going to be retained. So now that you've made these two graphs, we're going to go back to problem, or now that you've made that graph, you are going to use B and C, or you're going to use your graph to help you answer B and C. You are going to need to make another graph for the 8 iron because it'll make doing this make sense once you've made the graph for both. After you've made both graphs, you are going to answer B and C. B is asking you which makes more sense to talk about, the mean or the median. Now, the mean usually is what we would use, but the mean has sometimes it kind of has an issue if you have any outliers in your data. So sometimes the median is in fact the better choice. So when you're going through this problem, think about your data. If you have any extreme outliers, then maybe the mean is something you don't want to use. If you do have an extreme outlier, then the median may be a better choice. So keep that in mind when you're answering B, and then for C, you're going to help Josh figure out which club to use. 8-20, hopefully this will be easy for you to answer since you've already calculated the interquartile range, and now you should be able to tell Josh which type of club he should use and why. So after you're done with 8-20, please answer the following questions all the way to 8-22. Thank you guys, and hopefully this has been helpful for us in being able to figure out how to calculate the interquartile range and how to find the distribution of data in statistics. So I'll be back tomorrow, guys. If you have any questions, then I can help you then. All right, give your full attention back to our substitute teacher today and make sure you give your full respect to them. I appreciate it.